Our culture is our culture. Can be pretty, can be vulgar. Forgotten knowledge left by elders back when giants moved the boulders. Warriors, not soldiers. Before them banks controlled us and got ranked against opponents. Some say snakes against the rodents. People change for some exposure. Whilst contracts try and own ya, sometimes pride can build a loner, just like white can build a vulture. Now they want to kill our culture, but we'll fight for fish and chips. They want to work in Mona, but our dreams is what we wish. Standing in the way are some drone army pigs who helped us all forget that we were already rich. Now we're running to the forest, to the beaches, to the shores, to build our campfires and for tribes to be restored. Look inside for guidance, your soul is your source. And we can rock and roll like it's 1964. Thank you. And who's David Icke?
Who's there? Thank you. Cheers, man. I'm all right doing that. Cheers, man. Hello. Oh dear, bloody hot, innit? Anyway, for anyone who's watching this on film, I've not joined Madonna's cult. It's accreditation. I've been accredited. Can't touch you for it. I don't know what I'm really going to say today. I know I'm going to start, and then we'll see where it goes. But I was asked to come along and speak, and I understand the theme of this secret garden party is superstition. So I thought I'd start with that, and just a few definitions. Interesting word definitions. They can be incredibly enlightening about a situation we're facing. So, superstition, an irrational, that will come up a lot, belief that an object, action or circumstance not logically, that will come up a lot, related to a course of events influence its outcome. Superstition, it says, is a belief, practice or rite irrationally manipulated or maintained by ignorance of the laws of nature or by faith in magic or chance. A fearful or abject state of mind resulting from such ignorance and irrationality. So, we go on to irrational. Not endowed with reason. Now, this will come up a lot, reason. Affected by loss of usual or normal, there's another one, mental clarity, incoherent. Marked by a lack of accord with reason or sound judgment. Rational, having or exercising the ability to reason. Of sound mind, sane. You're only sane if you are rational. And it is consistent with or based on reason, logical. Which brings us to logic, a system of reasoning, the formal guiding principles of a discipline, school or science, and reason, a normal mental state, sanity, and it brings us to the final one, normal. What is considered normal? That, according to the definition of the word, is conforming to a norm, standard or pattern, being typical, relating or characterized by average intelligence. So, if you're normal, you have average intelligence. I'm glad I'm not normal. And it is being free from mental illness, sane. So, when people talk about superstition, that's kind of strange and far out and off with the fairies and all that stuff. And the people who've really got it, the ones who are considered intelligent and clever and academics and people in the media, they are normal. they are logical, they have reason. But what do all those words mean? All those words relate not to something that is, but something that is perceived to be. And that perceived to be is the norm of a society at any time. So, a few centuries ago, if you thought the earth was flat, you were logical, you had reason, you were normal, and therefore you were sane. People that said, actually, no, it's a sphere, they were crazy, dangerous, or both. And when you look at the world we live in, and what is considered crazy and what is considered sane, they are merely perceptions of point of view at that point in a society's development. So, if you want to control society's perception of reality, then you only really have to set and implant and impose the norms in that society. Because everyone then that conforms to your norms in what they say and what they do is perceived to be normal, rational, and coming from a point of view of reason. And anyone who challenges those norms is considered overwhelmingly to be crazy and ridiculous. But when you examine the norms on which this society is fundamentally founded, you find a simple thing. They're bollocks. And because anything that is founded on something becomes the foundation for everything that comes away from that foundation, we have a, shall we say, an Icke law of physics, which is bollocks begets bollocks. And that's the society we have. Once the foundation perception of reality is flawed, everything that comes from that must by definition be flawed. So, the perception in the vast majority of people is that this world is solid. This world is solid. Everyone knows that. Look, it's solid. The foundation is that the world is solid. Everything comes from that. The foundation of science is that the world is solid. It has a discipline called quantum physics, which shows it isn't, but they acknowledge its existence because they have to, and then cock a deafen on all the other disciplines that science expounds. We have a medical system of alleged health, which is based on the world being solid when it isn't. We're having political decisions being made on the world is solid when it isn't. And once you have that basic flaw in the perception of reality, everything that comes from it must be the same flaw in different expressions. So, I say to people, maybe not too many here, but some, I'm sure, what do you see when you look out of your eyes? Do you see everything there is in the space you're looking at? And they go, yeah, of course, mate. The vast majority of people in the greater world will say that. And yet, when we're looking through our eyes, and that's a myth as well, you get deeper into it, we are looking at a tiny frequency range that is so tiny that humans are basically blind. Mainstream science says that of the mass matter that exists in this universe, the electromagnetic spectrum is about 0.005%. Some people say more, but not by much. Visible light, which is the only frequency range that we can see and perceive as a reality, is a fraction of the 0.005%. That's what we can see. Every second, something like 10, 11 million impressions, as they call them, are taken from the mass of information that's in the energy field we are living in. Of those 10, 11 million impressions, the brain takes 40 to create a sense of reality, visual reality, from those 10, 11 million impressions. And that is done within a tiny frequency range that's almost infinitesimal. People will say, if I say, does time and space exist? They'll say, well, yeah, of course it does. But does it? What is time and space? If you get deeper into this, what is happening all the time as we create reality in this sane, rational, logical world is that vibrational information is being turned into electrical information by the five senses. It's being communicated to the brain in an electrical form, and the brain decodes that into a digital holographic form that we call the physical world. As it's doing that, it is creating our visual reality in a tiny little part of the brain here. And so everything that we perceive as this vast panorama of reality we call the world exists in that form in a tiny part of the brain. So at night, when you look into that night sky and there's those millions and billions of stars and lights, and they're so far away, oh, they're billions of light years away, when in fact, at the form you're perceiving them, they exist here. And we live in a, what I call a cosmic internet. If this room had the wireless internet, where is it? I can't see it. You go into any building where they have the wireless internet, you cannot see it. But you take a computer and tune it into the internet, and suddenly onto the screen comes not only a reality in pictures and moving pictures and colors and all text and all the rest of it, a worldwide reality comes onto that screen out of the unseen. The same reality that can be picked up in Sydney, in London, in New York, in Moscow, Johannesburg, anywhere. And what is making life easier for people like me these days is that the technological developments are mirroring the reality that we are experiencing. So we are part and are interacting with a cosmic internet, which in principle is the same as the wireless internet. It is a mass of information fields. And we are choosing, by our state of being and our attitudes, to pick out those fields and decode them from the vibrational into the electrical, into the holographic and digital, which we call the world. For instance, I am not speaking words to you now, and you are not having words communicated to you in the form you're hearing them between me and you. What I'm communicating to you is a vibrational information field which represents what I wish to communicate. You then pick that up and decode that vibrational field into the process that I've talked about, and then you hear words. This is why in medical situations now, where they're dealing in new techniques of suppressing pain, they are blocking the messages that come from the point of impact to the brain, because when you bash your knee or your shin, you only say ouch when your brain decodes that information. The body, therefore, is like the rest of this reality. It is a hologram. And a hologram is not a solid physical expression of anything. It is an illusory three-dimensional form. And when we come back to what I started with, about rational reason, logic, coming not from reality but from a point of observation and perception, then if the body's a hologram, then how on earth can a medical profession effectively treat the body when they don't even know what it is and they are treating it from the point of view that it's a solid entity? The interesting thing about an hologram, one of many interesting things, is every part of a hologram is a smaller version of the whole. If you take a holographic print and you cut it into 4 pieces and you fire the laser at the 4 pieces, you don't get a quarter size of the picture, or of the quarter part of the picture. You get a quarter size version of the whole picture. So now we can begin to understand, from a point of view of reason and logic and normal perception that we have today, scientists, doctors look at reflexology, they look at acupuncture and all these other alternative ways of treating the body. Let's take reflexology, where they find different parts of the foot, different parts of the hand, through which you can treat organs and other parts of the body. Acupuncture has a point, points all over the ears and everywhere else that represent different organs and parts of the body. Now let's go over here to the reason, and they'll say, load of bloody bollocks, mate, impossible, load of rubbish, all that stuff. You see it all the time. Well, let's go to this point of reason. From the point of view that the body is a hologram, and therefore every part of the body is a smaller version of the whole. What it means is, in every part of the body, the whole body must be represented, and thus you can treat parts of the body as a whole from parts of the body that are expressions of the whole and connect with the whole. From over here, reason, they say homeopathy is a nonsense, impossible, ludicrous, stupid. We've got this Dame somebody or other who's the health spokesman or advisor to the government, wants to get homeopathy off the national health. Load of rubbish, because she's coming from this reason. Well, the universe and reality that we experience in its base state is information, vibrational information, just like words are in their base state. That vibrational information is the basis of everything. And it's that which becomes the electrical, the holographic, which are all expressions of this base information. So everything is information. A plant is information. A substance is information. And what this point of reason says about homeopathy is you can't dilute and dilute and dilute a substance until there's no substance left in the water and say it treats anybody. Load of rubbish. Well, this point of reason. But the Institute, or the Aerospace Institute in Stuttgart, Germany, Mainstream Science, they've developed a way of photographing information in water droplets. And one of the things they did, if you put water has a memory on YouTube, you'll find a video about this. They got a flower, a tank of water, and they put the flower in the tank. They then took the flower out, and they used their technique to photograph the droplets of water from that tank. Every single one of them contained the information of the flower. And then they got local people to come up. They got a big tank of water, and they said, just take 4 droplets each and put it into a little dish with your name on it, which they did. And then they used their technique to photograph the information in those droplets. Every single 4 droplets representing each person was different. Every individual droplet within the 4 was virtually identical. In other words, the act of taking a droplet and putting it in a dish had impregnated that droplet with the unique energy field of the person doing it. So, from this point of observation, homeopathy is perfectly explainable. You may take the substance out of the water by diluting it and diluting it and diluting it, but what's still left is the information of the substance, and that's what does the healing, by working on the information level of the body. And then, when you start to realize that the body's base state is not this, but an energetic field, some levels of it can now be measured technologically at the electromagnetic level, then some other things become suddenly not mysterious and nonsense from that point of reason. When some scientists over the years have postulated that this reality can only be seen when it's observed, they are absolutely right, except I would change the word. This reality can only be seen when it is decoded. The body is decoding information all the time. When I'm looking out here, I'm decoding information, and that which I decode I see, and that which I do not decode I do not see. And if you can manipulate the brain's perception of reality, which has been going on en masse all the time, then you manipulate the way that brain decodes reality. You manipulate people to see the world you want them to see. Now, when I was researching this years ago, came across this great book by a guy called Michael Tolbert called it's funny, you know, Bill, you remember Bill Hicks? Fantastic. He used to get into some profound things, and he would say, don't worry, the cock jokes are coming along in a minute. In my cases, don't worry, the reptilian thing's coming along in a minute. But this book was about the holographic universe and looking at all the scientific information that actually this world is holographic and so are we. And he told a story in that book which encapsulates what I'm saying here. His father had a party at their house and got a stage hypnotist along. And he was doing all the party tricks and stuff like that. And he had this guy called Tom. And he had him in the old hypnotic state, sitting in a chair. And he said to Tom, when I bring you back to a waking state, you're not going to be able to see your daughter in the room. And he then led the daughter, the hypnotist, to stand right in front of Tom, who was sitting in a chair. He's looking in her belly. He brings him back from an apparently waking state, and he said to Tom, can you see your daughter in the room? He starts looking around. He can't see anybody. No, she's not here. She's laughing. He can't hear her. The hypnotist went behind the back of the daughter and put his hand in the small of her back. And he said, Tom, I'm holding something. What am I holding? He said, well, you're holding a watch. Seemed perfectly logical to him because it was obvious. He's holding a watch. His daughter's between the watch and him. He said, there's an inscription on the watch, Tom. Can you read it? The guy leaned forward, read the inscription. Now, if we go over here, that's impossible. You can't do that. That's stupid. That's mad. You go over here to another point of reason, logic, and all that stuff. And what has happened there is blatantly bloody obvious. And it connects to what I've just said about this world only existing when we decode it. In the daughter's base state, she is an information field. In this world's base state, it's an information field. What has happened with Tom is the hypnotist has in effect put a firewall in his brain. So by saying you will not be able to see your daughter in the room, and he has cut off the brain from decoding her energy field into holographic reality, which his conscious mind can see. Everyone else in the room who's watching this going on can see the daughter because they've not been firewalled off from her energy field. And therefore, only when we decode it can we see it. And when you get deep and deep and deep into this, you start to understand the world we're living in every day, why governments do what they do, why media does what it does, why the education system is what it is. We are being programmed from cradle to grave to become software programs that have certain things that they will decode and they will not go outside of them. And what do they become? They become the norms from which we are seen to have reason and we are seen to have logic. Let's come to this thing which I'm supposed to be crazy about. Shape-shifting. Right? Let's go over here first. That's bloody mad, that is. You can't shape-shift. You can't go from a physical body to a physical body and back again. Do you know? Well, you can't because you've not got a physical body. Anyway, from the point of view of that, I agree with them. You can't go from a solid to a solid. And that's not what shape-shifting is. You're not going from a solid to a solid because there is no solid. You have two energy fields. One is the forward predominant energy field, which any observer will see. And when they decode that, like Tom with a daughter, etc., they will pull it through to be a holographic human body as we perceive it. Then there's a shift, not in the physical, because there is no physical. There is a shift in the energy field so that another information field becomes the dominant one. Now, that's the one the observer is decoding. To the observer, someone has just gone from a human form to a non-human form, and to them, in the illusion of physicality, it has happened physically. It is merely shifting information fields. And this is why throughout history, the shaman and people way, way back have been talking about shape-shifting in all its various forms. It can only happen because it's an illusion. It's not physical because there is no physical. So, if you are coming from this point of view and you see a physical health problem, because that's what you perceive it as, then you are going to treat what you see. From my perspective, you are going to treat the hologram. From their perspective, you're going to treat a physical solid body. But the hologram is just a projection of an information field. And when you are treating the hologram with drugs and scalpels, this is why you are never treating the cause and always treating the symptom. Because the symptom is a projection of the cause, which is an imbalance or a flaw in the base energy field of the body. And this is why, read my books, mate, okay? Now, where's your evidence? Go and do some reading. This is why the biggest cause of death in America, probably close to it here today, is the treatment. It's drugs, it's drug fatalities, it's botched operations, it's diseases and infections that you pick up in hospital. Put it all together, it is massively the biggest killer in America. Why? Because they're treating something they don't understand. And because of that, we have this mayhem. But why do we have the mayhem? Because the nonsense they are doing is coming from the nonsense they are perceiving in terms of reality. So you have government health policy. Where do they get government health policy from? The medical profession. They'll tell you to go and pour bloody vaccines into your child. Go and give it a tidal wave of total toxic shit before it's the age of 2, and tell it it's gonna have an immune system worth having for the rest of its life. It'll never have an immune system again that it could have had when it faces that. And that comes from this because it doesn't understand what reality is. And thankfully, after a lot of bloody years, 25 in my case, people in greater and greater numbers, including people in these professions, are starting to wake up to the fact that they've been going down a cul-de-sac their entire lives. Because if you try to answer the great mysteries of life, as they're called, from this perspective, you're going to hit wall after wall after wall after wall, because they can't be. If you're trying to understand the mysteries of life from the fact the world is solid when it ain't, you're never going to find them. And now, why is it? Shall we ask? I will ask. That's all right, isn't it? Yeah, no, thanks, mate. Let's ask this. Is this being done by accident? Is all this suppression of knowledge being done by accident, by ignorance alone in the core of where all this is coming from? How I got into this was very simple. I started to realize that there were endless explanations for the reality 25 years ago that made absolute bloody sense and answered mystery after mystery after mystery. And my question was, why isn't this taught in the schools? Why aren't there programs about this on the television? Why haven't we heard about this? Not to say you must believe it, but to say, hey, here's another way that you can explain life. And I stepped into the circle of deception, corruption, and conspiracy. And from asking that question, why aren't we being given access to this information, a whole vista and panorama opened up, which is now coming to fruition before our eyes. You know, when I wrote in my books 20 years ago that the Orwellian state was coming, total control was coming, the police state was coming, total surveillance was coming, the crushing of everyone financially was coming, so that a tiny, tiny, less than 1% was going to dominate everything financially, economically, and through the police state imposing upon the population, I was a nutter. But it wasn't prophecy, it was uncovering the agenda that's been unfolding for thousands of years, let alone hundreds. And what we're seeing now, with people like Snowden and what they've said about the fantastic level of surveillance of everybody all over the world without our knowledge, is we're just seeing coming to the surface what I was writing about 20 years ago. Not because I'm a prophet or a freaking genius. If you uncover what's projected to happen and nothing intervenes to stop it, predicting the future is a piece of cake. The idea is to intervene by alerting people that they are living in an illusion in terms of the reality we're perceiving as the life we're experiencing, but also that there is a conspiracy going on which is to enslave humanity on a level that would make Orwell wince. And that's another thing. This world is controlled, and this information I'm talking about is suppressed by a vast global version of a transnational corporation. And this web is made up of secret societies and particular bloodlines that have been interbreeding for thousands of years. And this is how it works. If you take a transnational corporation, take McDonald's, someone ought to, and you'll find the headquarters somewhere in America. In each country of the world, you will find subsidiaries of McDonald's who are taking their orders from the headquarters, and they are carrying out them to the letter. As a result of that, if you go into a McDonald's in Moscow or Sydney or Johannesburg or London or anywhere, you are going into basically the same McDonald's, carrying out the policy, everything of the center. How this world is controlled by a ridiculously few people, and my goodness me, they're talking about it's globalization, it's centralizing everything. Yeah, and all the 1%, what's that? It is the centralization of power into the hands of fewer and fewer people that have power over more and more people. It's what the European Union's about, centralizing power so the fewer and fewer are dictating to the more and more. And it's been systematic over centuries. Well, we've been watching the sport and the game show and all the other bloody things and diversions that are there to make us look there while it's all going on here. But you can do that for a while. You can put your head in the sand for a while. You can say that ignorance is bliss for a while. But ignorance will not always be bliss. It will come and knock on your door and ask for your papers. And that's what we're closing in on. And we as a human race need to start waking up, growing up, and recognizing what we face so we can do something about it. So what we have in terms of that transnational corporation is a spider, symbolically, and it's in Europe. It's not in America. It's in Europe. And it is dictating the global centralization of every area of human life. And in each country, America, though that's a very important one, obviously, anywhere you want to pick, there is a network of families and secret societies whose job it is to impose the will of the spider upon that country. And I've been to about 55, 56 countries in 25 years researching this. And that process is how I've seen the same things unfolding day after day, year after year, in country after country, even using the same excuses. Sometimes even the legislation's worded the same. It's centrally coordinated. And there's two mass manipulation techniques, because it's all a mind game. I just finished a book, it's called The Perception Deception. That is the conspiracy, which is why I started out today as I did about the nature of reality in brief, although there's enormous more to know. If you can manipulate someone's perception of reality, you will get them to see the world and behave and act in ways that suit your agenda. If you can persuade them that 19 hijackers that couldn't fly Cessnas suddenly managed to fantastically fly wide-body jets to the extent that wide-body jet pilots have told me they couldn't do it, if you can believe that, then you will perceive that they have to invade Afghanistan. If you have your own level of perception and observation of the same situation, you'll see that's a load of crap, just like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and nothing more than an excuse to scam the mind of the population to allow or support what we call the war on terror, which is actually the war on freedom, mostly of people with brown faces. You will do that. And there's two major mind and emotional manipulation techniques which have been the drivers of this all this time. One I labeled a long time ago now, problem, reaction, solution. Dead simple, devastating. Stage one, you want to change the world in a way that you know that if you simply announce this is what you're going to do, you will have a massive opposition against what you want. So you don't do that. Stage one, you create a problem. It could be a terrorist attack, it could be a war, it could be a government collapse, it could be an economic collapse. You then tell the people through an unquestioning and pathetic mainstream media the version of that event that you want them to believe. In 9/11's case, bin Laden organized it from a cave in Afghanistan. I wonder what kind of signal he got on his mobile. And what you want at stage two of problem, reaction, solution, you want a reaction from the people. You want outrage, you want fear, you want something must be done, what are they going to do about it? And at that point, those who've created the problem and got that reaction then openly offer the solutions to the problems they have themselves created. Changes in society that push on the Orwellian state, that justify more and more bombing of people with brown faces, and so on. And all over the world you see this, at local and national and international levels going on. And there's another version of it that I call no problem reaction solution. Because it's a perception game, you don't even need a real problem, you just need a perception of one. This is why we had weapons of mass destruction. Saddam Hussein can hit British targets in 45 minutes. Total rubbish, they knew it was rubbish. But it was a no-problem reaction solution to justify going in. We now know there was a no problem there. And alongside this, PRS, problem, reaction, solution, is its stablemate, its bedmate, its partner in crime. And I call this the totalitarian tiptoe. You're at A, and you know you're going to Z. But you know, if you go in two bigger steps, the change is going to be such that people are going to look up from the game show and the sport and all the rest of it, and they're going to go, what's happening? Ethel, what's happening? So you don't do that. You go as fast as you can, but not so fast that you alert too many people that there's a pattern here. I've just described the European Union. Do you know, in 1952, day after I was born, April the 30th, 1952, a man called Jean Monnet, who is still fated to this day as the father of the European project, he wrote a letter to a friend, and he said this, and I summarize: we are going to bring about this is 1952. What was that? 61 years ago. We are going to bring about the superstate in steps by continually producing economic excuses for more and more centralization. And we're still getting it today. All this chaos in Europe with the currency, what are they saying? We need more centralization of power in Europe to solve the problem that the centralization of power has created. It's all a mind game. Do you know, I'll give you a wonderful example of what I mean about this ongoing agenda. In 2007, well, let's go back a bit further, even better. In 2000, September 2000, there were a group of people in America. They became known as neocons or neoconservatives. They were the people behind the Bush administration when it came to power in early 2001. In September, a year before 9/11, they produced a document which called for multiple theaters of war being fought by American troops to take over country after country. And it listed them. And they included Iraq, Iran, North Korea, Syria, Libya, etc. From the moment they came to power, the build-up started to 9/11, and 9/11 happened 1 year to the month after that document demanding those countries being taken over was published. From that point, when Bush, those people behind the document came to power, they started picking off country after country, using excuses after excuses. Bin Laden, Afghanistan, Saddam, weapons of mass destruction, Iraq. But he's a Republican, right? Bush, he was a Republican. And over here, Blair, you always know when there's Blair's lying because his lips are moving, we all know that. And, you know, if there's ever a half-truth in a Blair speech, it's a typing error. And he was the one supporting Bush and saying, yes, there's weapons of mass destruction. And he's Labour, right? So we have choice, we have political choice. It's not that all these major parties are controlled by the same force, that's just a rumour. So when Obama came in, man of peace, oh yes, man of peace, and then Cameron came in, who's a conservative, different to Blair, they have continued to pick off that same list of countries using different excuses like Gaddafi in Libya and what they're trying to do in Syria, and now they're trying to orchestrate, as they have been for a while, to go into Iran. These excuses are not realities, they are perception manipulators to make the excuse to pick off this list of countries they've had since way back. In 2007, one of the major generals in America called Wesley Clark, he was head of NATO at one point in military terms, he told him in 2007, he told an American television program that days after 9/11 in 2001, he was in the Pentagon, and one of the other generals in the Joint Chiefs of Staff, as they call them, said to him, we've apparently decided to invade Iraq. This is days after 9/11. And Clark's going, what do we invade Iraq for? You know, maybe they don't know what to do, so they've got to invade somebody. He comes back some weeks later, and he talks to the same general. This is 2001. And he said, why haven't we invaded Iraq yet? Well, are we going to invade Iraq? He said, it's worse than that, sir. He said, we're going to invade 7 countries in 5 years, or that's the plan. And he listed the countries: Iraq, Syria, Iran, Libya, etc., etc. The same list as the the neocons. What we're seeing unfolding is not random events. It's random excuses to justify the events. And what happened in Libya is that those so-called rebels were mercenaries, most of them, funded by the West to start the trouble. This is how it goes. This is how it goes. And it's gone the same in Syria. Stage one, because this is a problem, reaction, solution being created. Stage one, you fund and you arm the rebels. Then stage two, they start shooting at government targets. Western media, Western politicians, and then when the government forces start shooting back, Q! He's killing his own people! We must go in and protect the people. You know how they protected the people in Libya? They bombed the shit out of them night after night. They don't care about people. This is not about protecting people. It is about protecting and advancing an agenda for the total enslavement of humankind. I'm 61. I can go back to the 50s. I have, 61 years of seeing how far we've come. A lot of young people that came into this world when this has been going for a bit, they might see that this thing's moving on. They won't see the scale that it's moved on in that time. And we've got to start waking the frickin' hell up to what's happening, because if we keep ignoring this and we keep writing people, I mean, he's a nutter, all this bollocks, then when this bloody thing comes in, and if we think it's bad now, well, you look your children and grandchildren in the eyes and you tell them what you were doing when they are experiencing what is planned to come in their lifetimes. We are consciousness. This is just a vehicle for consciousness to experience this tiny frequency range. Our true consciousness, our infinite awareness, our point of attention, what we really are, what we infinitely are, it couldn't interact with this world like that, because it's on a different frequency. So it takes on the body, the hologram, that's vibrating within the frequency range we wish to experience, and then we can interact with the world. But the body's the vehicle, it's not who we are. The conspiracy wants to pull our point of attention from the point that we are infinite awareness, having experiences, to believe that we are the experience, that we are our name, we are our life story, we're our history, we're our sex, we're our race, we're our culture. They're just experiences. And if you pull the point of attention of people into the five senses, then you are isolating that perception of possibility in this tiny range of frequency. And the only way you're going to get, once you've withdrawn the range of attention from infinite awareness, so you're in this world but also you're of this world but not of it, you are pulled into the five senses, you haven't got that filter anymore. I can see how the pieces fit here. I'm looking into the world. I can see how it works. You're in the world and you're of it. And the only information that you can get to get a fix on who you are, where you are, and what's happening in the world is within this frequency range. And what's coming back here? The education system. The sausage machine program. Pink Floyd were absolutely bloody right. The media, 24/7, pumping out this mind control crap, constantly telling us information that's designed, and most of the journalists, I worked in the media for years, a long time ago, most of the journalists are not doing it by design or choice or whatever. They don't know they're doing it. The most programmed people I've ever met in my life have been scientists, doctors, journalists, and bloody politicians. And they're the ones running the show, for goodness sake. And so when you are trying to get a fix on the world and this information is all you've got, is it any surprise that the vast majority of people in this world today see the world the way that information tells them to see it, and sees themselves in ways that the information tells them to see it? Instead of I am infinite awareness having an experience, it's I am little me. I am Charlie Jones. I'm Ethel, who works down the store. I have no power. Other people have power. I have no power. And you know what? When we believe that, that's what we experience. What we believe, we perceive, and what we perceive, we experience. And we are being programmed from cradle to grave to believe that infinite awareness as is really Ethel Jones and Charlie Smith with no power and no ability to impact upon their own reality and their own lives. That's what's happening day after day after day. And it's been a long journey. 25 years of being abused and ridiculed and all the rest of it. But I tell you what, it's been frickin' worth it. It's been worth it because this world is waking up. How many people here are doing so? It's up to them. But I tell you what, this world is waking up and the game is changing. And it's only just begun. Thank you very much.